No one can see him. No one sees him that he's in any way special. But yet wherever he goes, he brings flowers to bloom, etc. Right? If 1,000 birds were to scatter flowers upon him, he would be embarrassed because he would stink. Right? That means that spirituality would in some way be detected, and that means he isn't pure enough yet. Right? So a very good thing to explore are these stages. And the ox herding pictures is a very good way. Tibetans have 25 stages. They have 8. Tozan has 5, very famous Buddhist. We like to think in some way that Dante had levels and stages of enlightenment or holiness in Divine Comedy. But it's a great game, isn't it? It is the game. This is man's game. This is really where man is. Yeah.
I was reading a book by Ibn Arabi, and he was describing some levitation.
Yes.
And, I imagine he's not a liar, so whatever it is, either it's a symbolic thing that later on, we'll read it and imagine it, take it literally, or it is something that he experienced himself. I mean, he definitely, I don't believe, was trying to...
Yes, you're quite right. You're quite right. There are states of mind that you can experience in sitting where that is, pardon me, there is decidedly the experience that you're being uplifted. It's there. And you might even have to look down.
And he describes somebody else who comes to him in the middle of...
Now, if someone else came along, and saw it, that would be another thing.
He's describing somebody else levitating.
Yeah.
Not describing himself levitating.
Yeah. Well, that would be nice.
I'm reading this and I'm thinking, he describes this guy actually walking towards him in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, in the middle of a huge storm.
Certainly.
And the storm, abates as he walks towards him. And Jesus is mythological, but this is definitely a historical saint having written this. So, wondering what is this about?
We're on, I think, if we don't destroy ourselves, mankind, I think, finally is at the point where we can now make scientific studies. What do we mean by science? I mean, carefully defined, well-identified descriptions of states of mind. I would like to see this to take place. I'd like to see the full range. What is the range of the mind? What is the reach of the mind? How far? What is its scope? So that we could then put them into such a structure with all the physiological readings, if necessary, of all the psychological states encountered. All of it. This is really the study of man. This should be psychology. But they got off on a bad step and they went into pathology. I always talk to students and I say, "What's it like taking psychology?" And they go, who wants to spend your entire semester reading about pathology when everyone has an interest in themselves, relationships, family? This is what they want to know about. And they've got textbooks written by, I'll leave that out.
Well, some of their studies, it's either on pathology or it's on other psychology students, because they're the cheapest people to do research on.
Yeah, this should be transpersonal psychology, but even they have trouble getting into it. But that's rather nice, because that means then philosophy can take over where they're reluctant to proceed. And I think that's appropriate. Right. Good.
You were differentiating earlier between fantasy and belief, and I wasn't aware that there was a difference.
Vanity?
Fantasy and belief.
Fantasy. A fantasy is what you do with the image that incorporates and represents the belief. See, a belief is a belief about yourself. Not any belief. It's a belief. They're related. Right? If you have a belief about yourself, you also have a belief about the nature of reality, because that's what you think is real. Whatever image you have of the self whatever is contained within it, like a seed, plays itself out in these stories. These stories are fantasies or daydreams. There are two kinds. One is those that come spontaneously, and that's what I've been talking about tonight. But they can equally be studied if you manufacture your own and watch those too. That's another class. With this, to do it properly would be to equally study your dreams and see the dream figures come up. If you can do that, put that into it, and get this kind of reflection going, you would have a very fine time exploring yourself wherever you do it. Yeah.
Last week you mentioned the idea of just concentrating on one of the important questions, what is the good, what is the one, etc. Now, could one do that within the context of...
Oh, thank you. What would be a real good goal? See, get the best goal. Well, how do you get the best goal? Well, what I've found is if you explore, see, how does the mind rest? It rests when you have settled things in yourself. That's what I'm doing. If there's still some things that are seeking resolution, the mind is not at rest. Now, what is significant about that is that, see, in the mind, we have fragments of a different kind that need to come together. And these fragments are fragments about the nature of reality. And of the self. Therefore, a kind of guided meditation on two things. One would be, what, after all, is the one itself? I take that as a question. What, after all, is the one in itself? Equally well, a more formal study of the one would be to take Proclus's 13th proposition, where he is going to establish a way of reasoning so that you can see that the idea of the highest good and the one are equivalent, or the same, or identical. No. Pardon me?
Do you advise sitting with that?
I didn't.
Do you advise meditating with the 13th proposition if you can memorize it?
I have run Zen centers where we've used this as a meditation.
Really?
Yeah. Spend 4 days or so on it. Oh yeah, very, very productive. Because, see, one of the things you have to face is the terrible but interesting question of, set, here it comes. Is the name of God misapplied? Have we named whatever it is we mean by God, God? Is there a higher name for God? Could that be the one? See, if I were to ask you, okay, now contemplate in any way, or just reflect right now about the nature of God. What evidence is there can you look for that there's such a thing as a divinity? All right, got the question? All right, take a moment out and try to think about it. Now I'll ask the next one. All right. Would you agree that whatever you see in this room right now